Before we apply the migration to our database, let's open up our database. And in the Object Explorer, I just want to point out there's nothing up my sleeve and there is no Ode to Food database inside the collection of databases here. Now let's go back to the command prompt. What I want to do is use .NET EF and this time go to the database command. So here's what I can do with the database command. I can drop a database or I can update a database to a specified migration. So still working from the ode2food.data folder, what I want to do is update my database. Specifically, the database that is pointed to by the connection string in my ode2food project. So I want to do .NET EF database update, and once again specify a startup project that points back to my ode2food.cs proj. Let's execute that command, which by the way, there's additional flags I could add if I wanted to have some additional verbosity. But even with the defaults here, we should see some SQL DDL statements scroll by. Some statements about creating tables, and there they go. And I can see what the entity framework has done is a number of things, but it has created a table named restaurants with the ID, name, location, and cuisine. It's also, by the way, decided that since I have a property named ID, that's going to be the primary key for this table. So all of this can happen just by convention. If you don't like these conventions, there is a C# API that you can use to tell the entity framework to behave differently. There's also attributes that you can apply to your entities to say that this property name maps to this column. Perhaps you want to call it something different, something other than name, or have some sort of prefix. But now that this command has executed successfully, I should be able to come back to Visual Studio. I should be able to refresh the list of databases that I have here, and I now have Ode to Food. If I drill into this, I now have a table, dbo.restaurants, and there's also a table that the entity framework keeps here to track the migrations that have been applied to this database. So now my database is in sync with my C# code. In the future, if I make a change to the restaurant, if I add a property or remove a property or change one of the data annotations on that entity, I can go through the same series of steps that I just followed here. I could add a new migration and then use .NET EF database update to apply that migration to my database and get it back in sync with my entities. So now we have our DB context and we have our connection string and we also have a database. But before we start using this database, let's implement one more operation in iRestaurant data that you typically see in a database application, and then we'll be ready to start using our database.